Good morning and welcome to our first live broadcast of our museum tour here at the Glendive Dinosaur and Fossil Museum. We're so glad that you've joined us today. And just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on, well, with all of the closures around, we decided here at the museum to do a virtual tour to give you a chance at home to watch the museum and walk through it and tour it without actually having to be here. So we're going to do several things, exciting things, and we'll get to those in just a little bit. But just a couple of quick announcements before we get going. This will be broadcast on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, and that will at least continue through the end of April. And our hope is that we'll be able to open the doors of the museum in May. That's our desire, but we know that the current situation in the world may not allow us to do that, but we'll see. We'll get there and we'll judge that, and we'll keep you updated as well. And that really brings up another point. When you do get the chance to travel again, make a point of coming and being a part of the Glendive Dinosaur and Fossil Museum, because we can do this on video and you'll get to see a lot and it'll be helpful and all of that. But coming and experiencing it for yourself live is much better. So we want to encourage you to come and see us. We are in Glendive, Montana, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well, and why we're located here and everything else. So we want to go ahead and begin our tour, and I'll remind you of some things later as well. But when people first come into our museum, they are told right up front what kind of museum we are. Yes, we are a dinosaur and fossil museum, but we are also unique in that we present our exhibits in the context of biblical history. And a lot of people ask, oh, okay, that's fine, and that's okay. I'm still willing to go through, but some will ask, what does that mean? So you're going to learn what that means as we go through on our tour, but just a little bit of an explanation as to what that is all about. First of all, it simply means that we believe the Bible is an accurate history of the world. So when the Bible says that God created everything, we believe that God created everything. We think he did it in 6 days, just a few thousand years ago. And you'll hear about that as well, and why we think that, and what we think some of the evidence is for that. And you'll get the gist of it. This is not something that we're going to try to shove down your throat, but just give you something to think about. And you're going to get to see a lot of cool dinosaurs and fossils as well. But we want to let you know right up front that we're doing this in the context of biblical history. The other thing that means is not only do we believe the Bible is an accurate history of the world, but we believe that the flood of Noah's day, the global flood, is what laid down the fossil record, and why when we go out and we dig up bones and fossils, we want to explain why we think those bones and fossils are here. So you'll get a lot of that as we go through, and we will explain it as we go. Today, we are going to focus on our entryway, and we're going to hit several things here in our entryway. And we will introduce you to several of our exhibits and the types of exhibits that we have as well. But these aren't going to be extremely long videos, so you don't have to worry about, spending 2-3 hours just watching one video. It's going to be 20 to 30 minutes tops, and we're going to try to keep it to that. But we want you to experience what we have going on here at the museum. And one of the ways we're going to do that, especially for kids, is we are going to go through our junior paleontology activity sheet. We're really excited about this. My wife Keely came up with this idea a few years ago to have the kids, as they walk through the museum, fill out this activity book. And we're going to give you a chance to do that virtually through our Facebook Live event. And so today we're just going to be focused on this very first page. That's going to be our goal today, to kind of complete this first part. And then starting on Thursday, we're going to go actually into the museum itself and begin to look at some of the different exhibits and the different rooms that we have. If you complete this junior paleontology sheet by the end of April, when we have gone through the museum, you can contact me and I will send you a button that says Junior Paleontologist. And we haven't figured out exactly how we're going to do that yet, but we will keep you updated on that as we go. So let's start our tour through the museum. My son Alden is over here by our case that has real dinosaur bones in it. And Alden, would you help me out today?
Yeah.
All right, so here's a junior paleontologist activity book, and Alden's going to help us by beginning to answer some of the questions that are on that. What's the first question, Alden? Can you read that for us?
Glendive Dinosaur and Fossil Museum is located in what state?
Wow, what state are we in? That seems like such a simple question, doesn't it, Alden? But not everybody knows when they're traveling through, all of a sudden they're here at the museum and they're wondering, where in the world am I located? Now, what are some of the answers we get, Alden, about what state we're located in?
Wyoming, North Dakota.
Yeah, some people think we're in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we get all sorts of answers to that. But what state is the Glendive Dinosaur and Fossil Museum located in?
Montana.
We are in Montana. We're in the far eastern side of Montana, just about 30 miles or so from the North Dakota border. And one thing we're going to talk about later is why we find dinosaur bones here in Glendive. And we're going to talk about what's called an anticline. So one of your jobs is to go look up that word anticline and see if you can figure out what it means. And we'll explain how that is why we find dinosaur bones here in Glendive and maybe other places don't. So we will explain that. Now, look at this case right here. So why don't you read the next question on the junior paleontology sheet, Alden?
Our entryway has fossilized bones found on our dig site displayed in the case. Name one dinosaur the bones come from.
All right. Well, you know, one of the things that we have here in the museum, and it's something that we're pretty proud of, is the access to real dinosaur bones that we have from our dig site and bones that we can put on display. So as you look through this, you're going to see all sorts of different bones from two basic dinosaurs. What's this dinosaur?
Edmontosaurus.
This is from an Edmontosaurus, and this is the end of a tibia, which is one of the leg bones, the lower leg bones. That is the larger lower leg bone. And then right next to it down here, you're going to see a fibula from an Edmontosaurus as well. And then up above, you're going to see a scapula from an Edmontosaurus as well. And I'm going to kind of put my hand in the picture here. Let's see if I can get my hand in the picture. So you can kind of see how big that thing is. It's pretty good size. That scapula, Edmontosaurus were very large, and we'll learn a little bit more about those as we go. And what kind of dinosaur do we have over here, Alden?
Triceratops.
We have a Triceratops. The end of a Triceratops femur is right there. And so on your sheet, if you have your sheet with you right now, I want to encourage you to write down one of those dinosaurs. So it'd be either Triceratops or Edmontosaurus. Now, a lot of museums have real bone, and they have real bone on display in a variety of ways. Some museums have the wonderful privilege of being able to have a complete skeleton that's all put together with real bone that has been joined together by metal on the outside of the bone. But most museums, and ours really is no exception, when it comes to our complete skeletons, we have museum quality casts. Now, they are exact copies of originals. So, Alden, why don't we walk over here to our T-Rex head? And let's talk a little bit about Stan. This is Stan, the T-Rex. Stan was found in South Dakota and was excavated by the Black Hills Institute They're the same organization that excavated Sioux that is found in Chicago at the Field Museum. And this is an exact copy of the original. So you can tell a lot about a dinosaur from the cast. And so let's just kind of talk through this cast a little bit, and then we'll get to the next question on your sheet. First of all, people like to ask the question, so why do you display casts and not the real bone? Well, that's a great question, right, Alden? I mean, that's something a lot of people ask and want to know. Well, there's several reasons, really. First of all, the amount of good T-Rex skeletons is very small. Now, there have been a lot of different T-Rexes found, but as far as good skeletons go, there's less than 20 good skeletons in the whole world. And so not many museums could have them. And we all know the idea of supply and demands. If there's not very many of them and a lot of people want them, they are very expensive. A good T-Rex skeleton sells for about $1 million per 10% found. So that's a lot of money, isn't it, Alden? Would you like to have $1 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would. Now, when it comes to casts, the way you can tell this is a cast is you can see that the metal that is holding it up is on the inside of the bone. You can see the rod there that goes up. There's metal that's going to go through the neck, and then there's metal that goes into the skull as well and holds it all up. You wouldn't do that with a real T-Rex skull because you'd have to damage it to get the metal on the inside. So if this was the original bone, you would make little metal saddles that would hold up the vertebrae, and you would have metal holding up all of the skeleton. In fact, the skull would probably be on some kind of table holding it up because it's just too heavy to put up on display on a full skeleton. But casts are very, very cool because they show the exact nature of the original. In fact, the people who made this is the Black Hills Institute, and they have access to the original bones, and so they make a mold and make a cast from those molds. So a couple things about Stan. Stan was a fighter. So look at his neck right here. If you can kind of come in and get a look at that bulge in his neck. At one point, Stan had a broken neck or some extreme damage to his neck that began to heal. And that bulge is the healing that began to take place on the neck. So he probably had some fused vertebrae and couldn't move very well. And the other thing is right here, his eye socket had been broken, and there's signs of healing on all of these injuries. And then up above, if you can get kind of a picture up above, it's kind of hard up there. Part of the top of his skull was ripped off, and that hole in the middle right there is about the size of a T-Rex tooth. And so he might have been battling another T-Rex, and he survived, at least for a while, to where these things begin to heal. So there's a lot you can tell about these things, and one of the things we're going to discuss as we go through the museum is that when God created everything originally, it was all perfect. There was no sin or death or disease or violence. But after sin came into the world, then all of a sudden we have death, disease, and violence. And these dinosaurs are good illustrations of that violence and disease as well. And we'll point out some of those things also. But we'll save that for another part of our time through the museum. So this is a museum quality cast. Now, his name is Stan. So, Alden, what's the next question on your sheet there? And read it out loud so people can hear.
How does a dinosaur get its name?
Can you read the whole thing about what it says?
Yeah. The person who found it often gets to help name it. That is why many are named after people or the places that were discovered.
Okay, good job. So dinosaurs are named based on the person that found it, generally speaking. So if you found a brand new type of dinosaur, one that's never been found before, you might even get to help name that type of dinosaur. We have a raptor upstairs that's called, do you know what that one's called, Alden? Okay, it's called Julie Raptor. And the guy who found it up by Malta named it after his sister, Julie. I don't know many sisters that would want to be named after dinosaurs, but maybe one would. And that is how sometimes those can get their names. Sometimes it's the type of creature they are. We'll talk about names as we go and what some of them mean. But if you find a specific specimen of a T-Rex or a Triceratops or an Edmontosaurus, you might get the opportunity to help name that particular specimen. So how do you think, Alden, this T-Rex Stan got his name?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Well, the person who found it, his name is Stan. So since the guy who found its name was Stan, this particular specimen is named Stan as well. So that's why you'll see different names. We have an Acrocanthosaurus in the museum named Fran. There's a T-Rex called Bob. I didn't find it, and my name's Robert, and I don't go by Bob. If I found one, I'd call it Robert. But if you found one, so with what you know about skeletons and all that, Alden, what would you name a dinosaur?
Wolverine.
Wolverine? Are you a Wolverine?
No.
So why would you name a dinosaur Wolverine?
Because in cast they have like iron inside of them.
That's good, see? In cast they have metal inside the bone. And if anybody knows anything about the X-Men, Wolverine has metal for a skeleton, so that's a pretty cool name. All right, good job, Alden. So now the question's for you as you're filling out this junior paleontology sheet. What would you name a dinosaur if you found it? Would you name it Tom, Bill? Whatever your name is, you could name it that, or you could name it something totally different like Alden did, where he calls it Wolverine. That would be a really cool name. Now, when you find bones out in the field, they don't have metal in them, but the casts have metal in them, and then if they put the real bone together, they put the metal on the outside. Now, we're going to take a closer look at Stan inside the museum as well in a future episode. But we want to explain again what kinds of things you're going to see as you go through the museum. So we have real bone. If you can show us the real bone again over there in the glass case. We have real bone in our museum. We have casts in our museum. So if you look right up above you, there's an Allosaurus cast skull. Now, we have a really good museum artist that works with us. Her name is Melanie Richard, and Melanie lives in Billings, and she makes all of our murals, our habitats, and our skin-on dinosaurs and other creatures. Right now, she's working on some really cool stuff. She's working on a Beelzebub frog, which is a huge frog, and a Titanoboa, which is a huge snake. So anybody that likes snakes should like the Titanoboa. Now, she made this particular Allosaurus head based on the cast that's right next to it. In fact, kind of a funny story, when she was going to take the cast skull home so she could begin to create the model head, her husband Park pulled up out in front of the museum in a convertible. And he was here to pick up the cast skull. So we took the cast skull down and we put it in his convertible, and he drove back to Billings. Can you imagine the looks he got driving on the interstate from Glendive to Billings with an Allosaurus skull in the back seat? I'm sure he got some pretty funny looks. And so she took that cast skull and she took it to Billings, and she created this skin-on model of an Allosaurus. You're going to see a lot of incredible things as we go through the museum. This is just our entryway. And so we are going to be going through and seeing all of our different exhibits. Next time, we're going to try to go through our seafloor and our marine room, which will be really cool. I think you'll really enjoy some of the things in there as well. And that'll be on Thursday at 11 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And you can always go back and watch these videos later as well. But there's one more question that I want to go ahead and introduce now, and we will talk through it as we go through the museum. Alden, can you read the next question on your sheet?
Throughout the museum, you will find many snakes. Tally or count how many you find.
Okay, so we're going to go through the museum and we're going to help you find all of the snakes. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not sure I know where all the snakes are. So we might discover some things together as we go through the museum counting snakes. I hope you find that exciting because that's a lot of fun. That's honestly one of the favorite things to do. In fact, is that your favorite thing to do, Alden?
Yeah.
Yeah, Alden said that that's his favorite thing, is to count the snakes as we go through the museum. So as we kind of begin to wrap up this particular episode of our tour through the museum, I want to go ahead and read this verse that's on the wall. A couple verses from Job chapter 12, verses 7 through 9. It says, "Ask the animals, and they will teach you, or the birds of the air, and they will tell you, or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, or let the fish of the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this?" And our hope is that as we go through the museum, you will see God's amazing creation, and you will see how God has formed things, and that it is clear that we have a creator. And our hope is that you will look to the Bible for the truth of what he's done. So once again, I just want to remind you, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Please join us on our Facebook page. We'll be doing live broadcasts. You can go back and watch the videos after, and you can join us doing the Junior Paleontology program. And Alden, would you walk over there and grab that button for me right here? So right here is that button. I'll let you zoom in on it. That is the button that you can earn if you complete the Junior Paleontology program. And we will go through all of the questions and the answers, and we'll do it step by step as we go. And so one quick thing that I just want to make mention of. Again, right now we're having to be closed because of the efforts to slow the coronavirus down in our state, in our country. And we gladly do that to help out in whatever way that we can. But we want to also give to you and let you know that the museum is still here, and we still want to proclaim God's word to you and to those that have never been to our museum as well. And we're not going to use this as a way to just try and get money or anything like that, but we do want to mention that if you can help support us in any way during this time that we have to be closed, encourage you to go to our webpage, which is creationtruth.org, and there is a button that says donate on that webpage. If you don't have the ability to do that, you can send me a message through Facebook or whatever the case might be, and I can give you a mailing address as well on where to send that. So we're going to wrap this up, and if you have questions, go ahead and put your questions down, and I will go through later today and answer as many questions as I can on the Facebook page, and we will kind of operate that way as we go. So we want to thank you. So Alden, why don't you come here and let's say thanks to everybody for joining us today. So thank you for joining us on this first edition of our Facebook Live tour of the Glendive Dinosaur and Fossil Museum. And we will see you on Thursday at 11 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Come and join us.